It is a brave new world out there, and for years now, people have been talking about drone swarms. Today, we are going to talk to an Israeli defense tech founder, Aviv Shapira, whose company essentially makes the software that makes these multiple drones in a formation situation actually function. He's done a bunch of other fascinating things as well. His work is on the battlefield in Israel, and he is selling his products to the United States military as well. Join me in what I think is a really, really interesting conversation. Let's get into it.
It is a prescription for war, this Iraqi invasion of Kuwait.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
The bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate.
We continue to face a grave situation in Iran.
We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall never surrender.
Hi, Marion McLean. Thanks for joining School of War. I am delighted to welcome to the show today Aviv Shapira. He is the co-founder and CEO of XTEND, an Israeli defense technology company. He served in the IAF as a young man, had a career in business and entrepreneurship after that. He's the recipient, I think you may be the first guest on School of War to be the recipient of not one but two Emmy Awards. And we'll talk about that and actually the way in which the work you did in the sports and entertainment industry before coming into defense tech, how those things all relate together, because I think that's really interesting. And Aviv, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, tell me what it was like to grow up as Aviv Shapira. You co-founded XTEND with your brother. Tell me about your family. Tell me about the part of Israel where you're from and how you ended up in the Israeli Air Force.
Okay, so I'm 45 years old. I live in Tel Aviv today. I have three daughters. So I was born in Israel. As a child, I was actually relocated to the U.S. as part of my father's relocation career. I lived in St. Louis for something like 4 years. I always loved aerospace, specifically. You know, how these things fly in the air. It was always amazing for me to learn how to actually make that happen. And eventually I went to study aerospace engineering. So I did my bachelor degree and I actually did my master's in rocket propulsion. So it was fascinating for me to actually understand how these rockets fly like 5,000 kilometers per hour. And eventually, as part of living in Israel, you are serving the army. Or the IDF, and so I decided to actually continue from my studies to the army itself. So I used my degree, my aerospace degree, to actually serve in the Israeli Air Force. That was how things connected to me in a very, very natural way as a kid growing up. I have two brothers. They're actually very different than me. My brother Matteo, that is one of the co-founders at XTEND with me, is actually very different from me. He comes from computer graphics, from AI, so we actually complete each other in many ways. This is actually our fourth business together, 4 startups behind us together. So interesting building businesses together with family.
So you come out of the IAF where you've been working on rockets, I guess, and you go into entrepreneurship. Israel is, of course, noted for its thriving startup space. Tell me about these early companies. I want to get ultimately to the question of the replay technologies, which is something that they kind of hit it big. But tell me about how you got into business and how you got started there.
You know, as a child, I was always into doing things, creating things. My parents tell me my first business was at the age of 10, and up until now, I had maybe something like 10 different small businesses, big businesses. I like to think about XTEND as the fourth startup that I've built. Replay was my previous company. I would say it was a very interesting ride. I have a lot of things to say about Replay. I actually give lectures for even in universities about the experience that I had there. about how a company that didn't have what's called product market fit actually ended up in an exit to Intel. But eventually, I call this lecture "Don't Believe What They Tell You," because everything that we've done was outside the box. Like everything people told us, we did the opposite way, and at the end of the day, we succeeded. And we didn't succeed because we sold the business to Intel. It was mostly because we won 2 Emmy awards. So that was the the people, the viewers of sports, basically saying the technology that you've built is actually worth an Emmy award. So I have 2 Emmy awards, one with the Yankees, together with Yes Network, and another one is for the 54 Super Bowl together with CBS. We've actually showed, I don't know if you remember this on television, but while Tom Brady was just about to throw the ball, the camera went into his head virtually, and you can actually see what he's looking at just before he throws the ball. And that gave viewers this, an innovative way to actually watch sport from different angles and perspectives. And for me, it was an amazing tick in the box. I would say much greater than an exit and getting money off selling your company. But I think by doing this, by building this company and eventually acquired by Intel, I learned so much more than going into XTEND. You become much more mature into building a new company where you've already done it 3 times before, and now the real challenge of my life actually began. XTEND, we'll talk about XTEND, but that was a much harder experience and much more impactful one.
Let's stick with replay for just a second, if we could, because first of all, I'm just kind of fascinated by how what you just described actually works, but also because I don't see it as totally irrelevant to the work of XTEND. I mean, obviously, it's not irrelevant in terms of business strategy and running a business, and the things that you learn about business in one context are obviously going to help you in another. But I mean, even on the technological level, I mean, in some ways, what XTEND does, like so much defense tech these days, it's about the transmission, control, understanding of images, and then the use of that, those inputs to do more things, and the ability to automate processes that before would have involved large numbers of humans. These all strike me as probably themes of the work of replay, but certainly of XTEND. So how did you do that? How does the camera, as it were, get inside Tom Brady's eyes and see what he sees?
Yeah. So Replay was actually an AI company before people actually called it AI, machine learning and neural networks. So we installed static cameras around, let's say, a MetLife kind of venue, or, like a football, NFL, basketball, baseball venue. And we use these cameras to actually build reality in 3D space. So imagine like all the players on the court, the goalpost, the grass, everything was actually modeled in real time in 3D space. And after that is actually modeled, you can actually, view the game from anywhere you want, from the eyes of the quarterback, from the goalposts. I had an amazing experience, and I'm never going to forget this, in the 2014 Premier League Championship between Juventus and Barcelona. I was actually wearing virtual reality headsets, and I was actually flying behind Messi. And I remember that kick he did, and I was just flying across, behind the ball and watching the ball going into the net. So you can basically be anywhere on the court because everything is modeled in 3D space. Now, as you rightfully said, that technology was the basis of XTEND. The ability of teleporting yourself from your couch to a Cowboy Stadium, for example, right, was I would say a building block of how XTEND was built. XTEND was actually built by allowing people using virtual reality headsets to actually teleport themselves into robotics, into drones, into ground robotics, and we actually, you can look at the world of teleportation in different ways. So when using it into sports, it was one thing, but when using it to allow a soldier to teleport himself into the battle space and going into a building and finding a terrorist was a whole different thing. But when you look at it from like 100,000 feet, it's very much similar. So there's a lot of similarities with the companies. Yeah.
Tell me about, and I may mispronounce his name here because I've only seen it in print, but Ruby Liani and the encounter you had with him, and how drone racing was actually the
Yeah.
wholly non-military origin of XTEND.
Exactly. So me and Matteo, we've built Replay. We invented this teleporting technology. After about 2.5 years in Intel, building something called Intel Sports, we decided to go out and continue to the next chapter in our lives. I really, really wanted to be a race pilot, an FPV drone race pilot, way before this was used, in Ukraine and other places as a weapon in war. I tried as best as I can flying these FPV drones, like at 150 kilometers per hour. And I just failed miserably. It's so hard. You need to move your fingers like a superhuman. It's impossible to actually do that. And Ruby Lian is our co-founder. He actually founded the Israeli Drone Racing League. So they meet every week. They do like these races, indoors, outdoors. They fly like crazy people. I told Ruby, listen, I just can't do it. It's too hard. Maybe I'm too old. Together we've actually invented what's called today an operating system. But back then it was a new way of flying drones. Instead of manually telling them what to do, like forward, backwards, right, left, you basically tell them what to do. Go inside the window, pick something, throw something, blow something up. So by actually using human intent and edge autonomy, that combination made drone operation very, very, very practical in such a way that anyone can become a race pilot. And XTEND, about 6 years ago, was a gaming company. What we did is we allowed people over the weekends, like friends, families, kids, whatever. You go and you actually fly drones for fun. And you don't have to train for like 6 months and fail. You just go and you do it naturally. It takes you about 30 seconds for training. You do this simulator, and you go live, like you go play top golf or bowling. It's that easy. And with that, we had an amazing future ahead of us of becoming this new gaming company that is allowing anyone to fly drones. And I think it took us about 7 to 9 months to actually understand that this technology has much more impact in the world of security and defense. If I can allow a soldier or a police officer to actually teleport themselves and actually conduct very complex missions from remote, I'm doing something very good to this planet, other than letting people play games.
So why in the gaming perspective first, but then we can take it into the military or security complex or context rather? Is it important that it be a headset as opposed to a screen or a console or something like that?
Yeah, there are two main differences. First of all, you're right. You can use both. If you use a 7-inch screen, the resolution of your flight is up to your screen, right? FPV glasses or VR glasses, it's like 200 inches. It's like all the way. It's like here. So it gives you much more resolution. And the second thing is you're not distracted. You don't see anyone else in the background. This is the only thing you see. And this is why sometimes they call it first-person view. It is if you are inside a drone. You don't see anything else but the outside of the drone, and you feel like you're actually there. It's like an out-of-body experience. A lot of people flying FPV drones sometimes say that they forgot where they are, or their heart rate is like beating so hard that it is what it is. It's like an out-of-body experience. It is this, and for soldiers, it allows them to actually conduct the mission in a much more effective and precision way.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I would have considered what we're discussing right now to be complete science fiction. And when we get to talking about swarms and using AI to control multiple objects, which we will hear later in the conversation, which of course is what you're really well known for. I mean, it's literally science fiction in the sense like Ender's Game. I mean, there are kind of books that foresaw this kind of thing on some level.
We have Ender Game posters all over our office.
There we go.
It's actually part of our roadmap.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we have we'll talk about it later, but we have 5 levels of autonomy. The 5th one is Ender's Game. We'll get there probably in 2028. This is one of the reasons why we're now doing this IPO, in order to actually get the funding and the right AI researchers to actually get there. But it's a very, very interesting analogy. Ender's Game, obviously, not only the fact that it was kids actually controlling, the future of humanity, but the fact that one person can control 1,000 robots together. That's part of
Let's
our
definitely come back to that. Yeah, no,
Yeah, sure.
Ender's Game rocked my world when I was a kid. Let's come back to that in a minute. Let's go piece by piece here. So we're still at the single flyer, flying a drone, probably using these augmented reality goggles for the reasons that you just outlined. Okay, I was just in Ukraine and I was at a school for drone pilots. Where parts of this will be in a forthcoming episode of School of War, where they were training mostly young people to fly these things. You could pay to go to the school, even as a civilian, but the military applications were obviously there as well. It was run by one of the Ukrainian Army Corps. And I was watching them, trying to learn how to fly up a staircase or fly through a door, and it looked really hard. And
It's
these
hard.
guys who've been practicing for days and days, if not weeks, were struggling. And I've on 1 or 2 occasions attempted to fly a small, cheap drone myself and failed miserably. So I get it. How does in terms that someone like me who's not really a technical or like an IT guy, how does the AI actually work? What are the pieces that are the hardest, and how does the AI get in there and allow less trained personnel to be effective?
Yeah. So first of all, you've seen it with your eyes, right? So people are actually manually telling this robot drone exactly what to do. Like every small, half an inch or even a millimeter of movement changes the whole orientation of that drone. It's actually similar to how computers were like in the 80s, where you had DOS and you literally had to put like a prompt, like C dash dash. You're actually talking to the robot in its own language. When we invented what we call a human-guided autonomy, you don't tell the drone how to do things anymore. It doesn't matter how to turn right and when to push the engines further. It's all about using AI to actually assist the operator to actually get the job done. So AI has a lot of really effective ways to actually help to get the mission done. I'll give you a few examples. One in which many companies are doing today, and that is, you probably know that most drones have cameras, right? And they're used to actually watch something. It's called ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And so you don't really need to look at the video. I mean, why would you? If you can have an AI agent look at the video for you, that can save a lot of time for the operators, a lot of money for, that time being spent. And also AI can recognize things much better than you because they learned for so many more hours than a human, then they are much better in that mission than they are. So that is like one of the first things that we allowed AI to actually complement or replace even humans in war, by actually watching the video instead of humans, and basically telling or getting the mission done. The second place is more connected to what we do in XTEND, and that is assisting the operator to understand what he wants to do. If I'm basically, we have this method where we basically point in space and we tell the drone, what is our intent? I want to pick this object and drop it there. So I don't have to manually move like forward, backwards. I'm just pointed an object. The drone will pick it up and it will throw it wherever I wanted to throw it. So that's that is all based on AI. How do you position yourself? How do you stabilize yourself? How do you know what the human wants? And that is all because you train on so many humans and so many languages and so many use cases that you're actually good at that mission. It's never 100%. It's getting there. It's always like 99 point something percent. But that AI is actually really helping. One additional place that we saw AI obviously helping, both in Ukraine, Israel, other places that we fought, is the whole notion of jamming and losing communication. So at the end of the day, if there is a connection between the operators to the drone is very, very limited to that distance, to that I would say space where jamming is not really affecting, but it's not reality. In reality, sometimes you go inside an underground tunnel or behind a building and you lose communication, and you want the drone or the robot to actually continue the mission for you. That is where AI actually is very. This is one of the most important places that AI is actually now going into. And as a company dealing in this space, we're actually teaching these robots exactly what to do. We call it AI pilots. So we train them on a lot of very different complex situations. And again, it's never bulletproof. It's never 100%, but it is very, very, very practical. I can tell you that it's sometimes even more ethical as well. I'll give you an analogy. I mean, let's compare two products, right? Let's take a Hellfire or any kind of missile. Once you shoot that missile towards the target, in most cases, whatever happens, happens. In some cases, you can maybe maneuver the missile like a few degrees left or right. But in 100% of the cases, it's going to hit something. With drones, it's different. First of all, you can actually stop and stop your flight path. And if you lose communication, you can actually allow AI to make a decision. So if I want to hit a car, for example, and suddenly the car changes into a human, the drone can basically says, okay, this is not my mission. I'm going back. And this is exactly the places where we call it smart munitions are the future of warfare, instead of the old days where you shoot and that's it. I mean, you pray that you're going to hit the right target.
So let's talk more about tunnels, because I know this has been a big theme of your work. One aspect of it is having drones that can still operate in environments where you've lost the communications link with them. I'm curious what other challenges you faced as XTEND has become, truly a defense tech company, which, as I understand it, sort of goes back to Gaza, 6 years ago or so, but then obviously after October the 7th becomes an enormous factor. Because there are the questions of what does the thing do when you've lost communications, but there's also ways, right, to extend the communications architecture into the underground, right, through dropping nodes and things like that. Just how have you built a system that works, a drone system that works underground in these degraded environments? It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, we actually started what we call tunnel work in February 23 when doing a search and rescue mission in Turkey. We basically flew indoor drones inside buildings that collapsed. So in these buildings,
Was this an earthquake or what had happened? What had happened in Turkey?
Yeah, the earthquake in February, the famous earthquake
Right.
in 2023.
Right.
Thousands of people died. Hundreds of buildings collapsed. We, as a company, by the way, we send search and rescue operators to go and try to save lives. It's part of our mission. I can tell you that this is the first time where we actually learned that you need a different method than using RF of actually controlling a drone. 3 ways to actually solve that. One of them is obviously fiber. We were the first company, as far as I know, using fiber on drones. Fiber is not new. In Replay, we used fiber for all of our cameras. This is how I know all about fiber and how do you actually use them for, long distance video transfer. So it was very natural for us to actually take the same thing we did in Replay in 2014 and apply to drones going into an earthquake or into buildings that collapsed in Turkey in 23. It was very effective. The big problem with fiber is you actually have to carry them on the drone. So they're very heavy. And that drone can fly for only for a few minutes. You cannot have the fiber on the ground because then you cause some tension. The second way of doing that is, as you rightfully said, using nodes of communication. So what we have today is a system that is up to 24 drones. Each drone can basically fly, stop, and then another one goes above, and you can actually continue in a row. Very effective, but very costly. 24 drones cost a lot of money. If you save lives, there's no price for saving lives, but that method is less used, I will say, because of the cost implications. And the third is actually using AI. Like I said before, we've actually trained agents to actually go and fly, without hitting the walls, go as far as you can, and then go back according to the breadcrumbs that you've scattered across the way, and go back and and output that image, that video. So that was very effective in underground tunnels, obviously from Turkey to other places like Gaza tunnels and such. But I can tell you that one of the things that characterizes the role of defense is the fact that the enemy is not really waiting for you to actually win the war or win the conflict, and it's always improving its skills. So after like 10 flights inside a tunnel, they're too smart. They just put a door there, right?
Right,
They're not
of
waiting
course.
for you to come back over and over again. So I guess it's like cyber. Every time one team, red team versus blue team, every time one side is better. What characterizes the world of defense is the fact that it's very, very hard to actually create a solution that works all the time. There's a famous video, I think from Afghanistan, where they started to use, I'm not sure if Afghanistan or Iraq, where they actually used the very, very basic foundations of AI, of if there's a woman or a kid, you stop, right? So they actually created posters of those on windows, on buildings, and it's the foundation of how do you actually deceive your enemy or your the good guys. So I guess that has been our experience today. I would say mostly we use these AI agents as like the main protocol.
Yeah, I mean, this cat and mouse game is just an eternal cycle of warfare, really of any competition, but certainly of warfare that's playing out across this human story where technology keeps changing, and some new technology will come along, and if it's dramatic, often there will be a group of people who say this is the technology that will define the future. He who masters it will win all wars. And in some ways, war will be over. And then inevitably, 6 months later, a year later, someone develops an effective countermeasure, and there we go. I mean, that's kind of in some ways the
Yeah.
story, right,
It's
of warfare.
it's interesting say, yeah, it's like a cat and mouse. The biggest problem this causes robotic companies like XTEND is the fact that every one of our customers actually wants something different.
Right.
If you look at
Right.
Ukraine war, it's very different than the war in Israel, very different than the war in Pakistan and India and North Korea, South. Everyone has a different kind of conflict. And so all of these robotic companies are just running around like headless chicken, trying to get one product to win them all, and it doesn't work. So I actually started by talking about product market fit. What actually make a drone, for example, fit for purpose for different customers. In defense, it's almost impossible. Every time you need a bigger drone, smaller drone, with fiber, without fiber, a better camera, different frequencies, bigger CPU, different GPU. There's like so many variations of drones. You cannot actually scale. So what we've decided as a company is to scale on the software. The ability to allow an operator to actually fly these swarm of drones in the most complex environments on this planet must be the future of combat and must be the future of robotics. And all of these drones and robots are going to continue to change all day long.
And the idea is you would be able to plug that software into a wide range of hardware.
Yeah, basically, as long as you meet the minimum requirements, which is like a Raspberry Pi, a Qualcomm Jetson, you can actually install the software. Throughout the years, we've actually acquired several robotic companies that we actually provide an end-to-end solution today. So instead of only selling software, like we did with, I don't know if you saw the news, like Lockheed Martin is buying our software and other companies like Boston Dynamics. We decided to actually give our end users like an end-to-end solution, because the software and the hardware sometimes have to be optimized to actually get the job done. Talk about tunnels, right? So in tunnels, you need different sensors to actually survive. You cannot just get a drone off the shelf and hopefully they can get over the dust, get over the darkness, get over the small confined walls. So we've optimized the software and the hardware to actually create this holistic solution. But we are now selling both software and complete solutions as a company.
So let's get into the software question and to this question of control, control of multiple objects, because this, I think, is what most people are going to find most interesting about your work, because we've all heard so much about drone swarms. I mean, this has been a subject of conversation, of sort of future war fiction, for some time. We've all seen the videos of, some public event in Shanghai or wherever, and there's thousands of drones in the sky reforming themselves to make, different patterns. And you sort of look at that and you think, oh gosh, because I mean, it's not rocket science, if you'll forgive the expression, to start to think about the military applications of what you're watching. But of course, and here I start to drive in the direction of my question for you, which is ultimately going to be, how the heck does this actually work? The thing in Shanghai I'm describing is a highly choreographed, pre-planned thing where you don't expect changes to the plan along the way, so you can kind of
Mhm.
pre-plan this ballet for X number of objects. Obviously, that's not how
Mhm.
military operations work. So, Aviv, you're probably the best person on earth to answer this question. How do drone swarms actually work?
So let's start with Shanghai, right? 1,000 drones flying around in the skies and creating shapes of animals and words and such. As you said, pre-planned missions. All of them have a coordinating space they go to, and at exactly the right time, they flash red, blue, green, whatever lights, and that creates a pattern of lights that is amazing to see from outside. Now imagine that you lose GPS in that environment. Poof, everything disappears, right? It's they will all probably all crash or bump into one another. So that is how the drone lights work. I've seen, I think, like 5,000 drones. Maybe I'm not up to date. Maybe it's now more, and it looks amazing. Um, the thing about defense, and we just talked about it like a few minutes ago, is you don't have pre-planned missions. You know what happens in the real world, where sometimes you don't even know what is your mission, and especially when you go into the mission, things change as you go along. So this is how we've invented something pretty simple. We all get this when we play PlayStation or Nintendo or whatever. We invented something called skills. So we have today maybe like 50 different skills that we can actually apply to drones. I'll give you an example. If I take a skill called navigate without GPS. So they basically look at the ground, they understand where they are and where they need to go, and they basically fly there. So that is a skill set. We give all of these drones, it's a software, a skill, and they can now fly without GPS, right? I guess we've all watched The Matrix. At least both of us have. Most of us have. Probably most of the viewers have. Remember the scene I Know Kung Fu, where you download a skill and you can now fly a helicopter. The same thing with these skill sets. So imagine now these hundreds or thousand drones can navigate without GPS. Now, what is their next mission? What do they need to do? So now this is where it gets interesting. So let's imagine you fly somewhere in the desert, and you need to find rocket launchers. Okay, so that is a skill set that is very easy to teach drones. You basically teach them a rocket launcher looks like this, and you train these AI agents over and over, like for 10,000 hours. And once they fly in the desert, they can recognize a rocket launcher, right? So now you have 100 drones flying around in a coordinated pattern, looking for rocket launchers. And then maybe the third skill, that let's call it attack drones or homing. Once you find that rocket launcher, go and destroy it. Okay, so now we've created this mission, right? There are drones that can navigate without GPS. There are drones that can actually find rocket launchers. And there are drones that can, once they find them, they go and suicide and kill those rocket launchers. So that is a swarm operating without humans, on its own, with something we call skilled, and they get the job done. So it's once you break this big problem into small chunks, you can actually get very creative and very effective in this new environment called robotic warfare.
So I'm going to start asking questions that maybe you'll have to be limited in your answers, but I'm curious what you have to say. So both today, in practical terms, but say a few years down the road in conceptual or theoretical terms, how many humans does it take to control a swarm? Or maybe that's the wrong way to put the question. I guess the right way to put the question is, how many drones can one human control? I guess that's the better framing.
Today, a drone is just a node in the network. It's like a iPhone or a computer connected to the network. What is a drone? A drone is a flying computer that has a payload, that has a mission. You can connect infinite. Why is there's no limitation? We've done a mission once from 9,000 kilometers away, where we controlled just drones on the network. I could have I controlled 3, but it could have been 1,000. It doesn't really matter. And I gave them a mission. So today, trying to make this question maybe more practical, it all comes down to I call it human machine teaming. How do humans and drones or robots, how do they work together? So the way we figured it is that the human knows best what is the mission. What do we need to do here? What is the purpose of these drones flying around? They don't just fly around. So we use human intent, like I want to get this done, and then another mission, maybe another mission, and then the drones take that mission, they break it down into those skills, and they actually execute. We talked about Ender's Game, so we're now playing around with, can an AI commander replace that human by giving that intent? So theoretically, it can, but I think the end users that we work with are not yet ready for that question. I think an operator sitting in the U.S. flying drones in, let's say, somewhere in the Middle East, it's effective enough. You don't need an AI agent or a pilot's commander in the U.S. flying these drones in the Middle East. It's not there yet. It's a bit futuristic, but it will be needed when missions need like very, very quick decision making, and when these drones actually have to work together to actually decide what to do. And we have a lot of scenarios that we see that are relevant. But as I said, I feel sometimes that our end users are third grade, and we're now developing high school, right? So we need to get there. Technology is a bit more advanced than where the end users are operationally.
Yeah, let's keep talking about this because I find it totally fascinating.
Yeah, of course.
Somewhere I read you say that it seems like 3 is the magic number for human control, and you just alluded to a situation where you were controlling 3 objects, perhaps 3 drones. And it's funny, that jumped off the page at me because in our doctrine, the Marine Corps' doctrine, my military place of origin, there is a kind of rule of 3s principle when it comes to command. Every battalion has 3 maneuver companies. Every company has 3 maneuver platoons, and so forth and so on, up to the Corps. This is obviously oversimplifying, but the basic principle is no one officer, no company commander can actually tell 120 different human beings what to do. No division commander can tell over 10,000 human beings what to do, but they can all coordinate in their mind 3 things. And so they have 3 subordinate maneuver commanders.
Exactly.
And they are commanding and controlling those things. So I'm curious if there's a relationship between that and the decision you made on how to build these more tactical control systems, or if it just came about naturally and empirically through your work. But so there's that question of just this rule of 3 and how things have been working so far on tactics. And then in the sort of picture of the future that you're painting where there may be no humans, that's fascinating to me. I mean, what I've read is sort of this question of human machine pairing or partnership, and this idea of swarms, but they're coordinated by, like I say, an F-35 that's somehow acting as a kind of like an AWACS platform, sort of. Maybe this is even happening already on some level. I'm not sure how much is public, but how do you get from the rule of 3 and something that, despite it's pretty high tech and cool because you're using AI a lot to, I presume you're like focused on one and AI is doing stuff with the others, or maybe you can tell me how that works. How do you get from that situation, which is sci-fi as it is still pretty familiar, to a world where, I don't know, the president of the United States or the prime minister of Israel or whoever says, do this mission, and off the robots go and they do a mission?
Okay, so let's build it. Let's answer it in building blocks. So we actually, the rule of 3 came from a very specific mission that we are constantly doing. Let's take, by the way, the earthquake in Turkey is exactly the same. But let's say there's a bad actor inside a building. So what we do as a company, we have a drone flying above, just looking at the building from the top, giving you like visual situational awareness. That's drone number one. Drone number two is used to actually break into the building. So we have a system that basically attaches, you would have loved this in your service, attaches a munition payload on one of the doors or the windows, blows the door up or the window, breaks the window, and basically creates an opening inside the building. That is drone number two. Drone number three goes into the building. From a cognitive point of view, understanding what each one of these drones is doing is what an average human can actually do. If I will add you a fourth drone that does, I don't know, 2 drones going into the building, for example, it's for an average human, it's too much. But controlling 3 drones in the situation I just gave you, that is on average perfectly fine. You can look from the building from above. You can see the drone hitting, breaking the door, and you can see another drone going into the building. That is perfectly. And then you see 2 pictures. You see you see a picture from above, and you see the picture from inside the building. So that is like the building block of our swarm. Where we've advanced from that, so we figured something we call an AI pilot can actually do that for you. So you tell the AI pilot, look at the building. If someone like runs out, tell me, I want you to break into the building and find someone bad or find someone inside. The drones, by the way, don't know if it's a bad person or not. They can basically go inside and find a person. But that unit of 3 drones that are now controlled by an AI pilot is the building block of now taking these 3 and multiplying them, and having like 2 buildings. And so now you have 6 drones with 2 AI pilots, with 1 human looking at these 2 AI pilots moving along. So this is where we are currently. We call it level 4 autonomy. As I mentioned, level 5 is that replacing that human controlling these AI pilots. Hopefully that was clear. But I was trying to build it like a step by step. But this is how we came up with 3, and this is how we build the future of someone telling 1,000 drones to go and clear a whole village. Right? It's getting there. It's coming.
Wow. And let me just, I want you to take another swing at the ethical questions because, my mind on this podcast always goes to questions of strategy and practice. But you know better than I do that whenever these questions of autonomy, certainly autonomy in combat come up, ethical questions are at the front of a lot of people's minds. You made the case a few minutes ago that in certain respects, drones are more ethical than a heat-seeking missile, which, by the way, when we talk about autonomy, like you fire something off to go find something hot, like that's already, in a way, kind of autonomous. And how this could be more ethical because you could have basically kill functions or return functions built into it. What do you say to the concerns of needing humans in the loop, sort of regardless of strategic imperatives? At least that's how I interpret it to usually be meant. What's your take on that?
So we've gone through a lot of we call them ethical review boards. Together with the U.S. Army Department of War, for example, we've done something called the Safety Fuse Board. So a drone has a munition on top. What happens if you lose communication? What happens if you use GPS? What happens if the operator does a mistake? There's like this very complicated decision tree that we've gone through. We're the first company to actually finish that process from end to end. And it wasn't easy. It actually makes the drone much more smart, but much more complicated as well. There's a lot of things you have to know about it, and it's trying to protect you at the end of the day. But the reason why it's more practical is because if you wanted to do something, and eventually it's doing something else, it has the ability to actually stop and not fire, as opposed to other traditional missiles and munitions where they're pretty dumb, right? I mean, they don't have any brains at the edge. Now, one more thing that I like about this space is that at the edge you have usually like a very strong computation device. We use NVIDIA and Qualcomm and others. They are always evolving. So if something happens in a certain area in the field somewhere or in training or whatever, we can actually learn from that mistake and upgrade the software. So now next time you're coming much more prepared for your next mission. And I think that is the future of munitions in general. I mean, it's going to be hard going back to these dumb, munitions that basically have a ballistic path and hit whatever they hit. Even if it's a hit signature, you can still hit a kindergarten, so God forbid. So I think the future of warfare in general is based on AI at the edge, on computer at the edge, and on smart munitions, which is really changing how things are being done. And that is the basis of what we've introduced. We've done two program of records of what we call loitering munition or smart munitions. And we really introduced a new way to actually fight the war on one hand and actually protect the soldiers on the other. I mean, inventing this breaching capabilities was something that we did just because of survivability. We had to survive this very complex urban warfare where you go door to door to door to building, and if you can replace these soldiers with drones and robots, I mean that must be like the right thing to do.
My mind naturally goes to these strategic and military questions just because of my background, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a few business questions before our time was up. You made reference to your partnership with Lockheed a few minutes ago and how your operating system and software, and I assume other elements of what you do, are going to be integrated into some of the command and control or operating system stuff that they're working on. That's kind of like a holy grail, or pretty close to the holy grail situation for a lot of these smaller defense tech startups abroad that I'm familiar with. There's this, I don't have to tell you, this thriving ecosystem of defense tech startups in Israel. There's also, when people talk about drones these days, their minds often go to Ukraine. There's a thriving world of smaller companies being led by people, often who are either from the battlefield themselves or have substantial experience or forward deployed, partnered with tactical units. There's a lot of know-how out there, in other words, in these defense tech sectors about the nature of warfare in 2026. My impression is it's pretty hard to pick up and come to the United States and succeed like XTEND seems to be in the process of succeeding. How did you do it? Was it in fact as hard as everybody says?
From our path of building the business, we actually remember the days that we were a gaming company. The first thing we did to actually go into security and defense was opening a U.S. company in Tampa. This is where we manufacture, by the way, everything, because we understood that gaming might be great, but if we do something in defense, it has to be in the U.S. market. That's the biggest defense budgets in the world, probably the whole world combined in one country. And this is how we started. We built an independent company with all American employees. They're classified, so they basically do whatever they need to do according to these, to the classifications of their contracts. And actually that became our business model moving forward. So we now have 5 of these companies. We have, company in Singapore, in Europe, in the UK, and all of these companies are on the ground working with their end users on their own very, very specific requirements. So the operating system is the base, and everyone takes it to their own different direction. And everything started for us in the US, actually. A lot of people call us an Israeli drone company or robotic company, but the software was originated from Israel. But our US business, our US company was there from day one, and has been saving lives for the US government, for the DoD, now DOW, ever since we started.
Yeah, and then the structural questions here are always kind of fascinating and quirky to me. So you made reference to the security clearance angle. So your U.S. employees, based on what clearances they have access to stuff that even though it's your company, you don't.
Yeah, there is a firewall between the companies. There's a different IT servers. The program I mentioned with Lockheed Martin is a U.S. program. I'm not in the details of that program. I mean, besides we all read about it in the newspaper, of course. But that is the only way to actually work in this market. You have to be local. I have a Singapore company who's doing classified things with the Singapore government as well. They take the software and they build applications on top of it, things that I don't need to know about. And that's the only way to go. We're now opening 3 more companies, and we're opening Mexico, we're opening Japan, and we're opening Germany, because these are very, very specific countries with very, very strong need for national security and self-reliance. They don't want to buy from outside, and they have very, very specific requirements that are only for their country.
Wow. Okay, last question for you. We've talked a lot about the evolution of this tech over the last 6 years or so that you've been heavily focused on the security side of this. And I was going to ask you, what if you went back to 2020 Aviv and told him what 2026 Aviv knows about the state of the art? What would most surprise 2020 Aviv? So address that, but then I'm going to ask you a follow-up, which is project it forward 6 or 10 years out. What do you think? What do you think has the best chance of surprising you when you look back 5 years or so from now?
So back in 2020, we were very, very broad. So we said, okay, we solved what we thought was the biggest problem in robotics, and that is removing the operator from the site. So, where do you need that technology? Defense, obviously. And then we said oil and gas. In oil and gas, you have these people going on oil rigs, flying around drones underneath oil rigs, inside tunnels and chimneys. And so we figured that let's go all the way. Let's do gaming in oil and gas, in agriculture, in defense, and we thought we were like Supermans and we can not be focused. I think the last 2 or 3 years made us understand that focus is very important, and the ability to have the power to save lives is sometimes much more important than return on investments or anything else. I've built like 4 or 5 companies in my life, and this is the first time I feel like I found this purpose in entrepreneurship that is far beyond trying to make money or trying to create something that it's just people need. It's much if I can just save one person, it's enough. And we've been saving people from the day we started. So that for me is everything.
In a way, this is an impossible question to answer, but what do you think is most likely to surprise you? Pick your time, 5, 10 years from now. What do you think's a sleeper out there?
A sleeper, like everyone missed AI. You mean what's like the next thing that will happen in space?
Yeah, sure. Or even some aspect of AI or within AI.
So yeah, I guess everyone is thinking that AI is going to replace soldiers and police officers and things like that. I mean, that's obvious. What is the next thing? Hopefully I'm wrong, but all of these all of this technology going against us in some way, going wrong in a way. Hopefully I'm wrong, right?
I have the same
We also
concern.
Terminator movies. So it can easily go wrong, but I would say it can very easily go too good for our enemies out there.
Yeah, my own take, I mean, you don't have to agree with this, of course, but my own take on these questions of human in the loop and ethical considerations, every time I hear, friends of mine deep in the weeds on these conversations, I always think, these are really nice conversations to be having before the war starts. Because my prediction is these considerations are all going to be a lot less relevant seeming as soon as the Chinese, in the American context, start achieving operational success because they are concerned less with these things than we are. At which point I think it all goes out the window pretty quick, unlike day one. But that's my take.
It's another view of the future. I agree. It's I cannot. I tend to agree. I have to say.
Aviv Shapira, co-founder and CEO of XTEND. Truly interesting conversation. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and for what you do.
Thank you so much for having me.